What experience of yours is so crazy you don't tell people about it because they wouldn't believe you? I used to sweat blue for a few months. My clothes, nails, and phone cover all got stained blue. It went away after a while on its own, which was good because the doctors couldn't figure it out. I was like 12 years old and played with my dog in the backyard. He suddenly stopped and just looked at my leg. There was a piece of wood in my leg. It was 8 centimeters long and in 90 angle in my leg. It didn't hurt. I didn't feel anything. To this day I'm wondering how this stick found its way into my leg. One day, completely out of the blue, my daughter, 8, started telling me she wanted to look out the window to see shooting stars. I told her it's very rare to see any shooting stars where we live, Yonkers, NY. Close bracket. She was really adamant that we should look and try to see one anyway. So I walk with her over to our living room window and look out with her. I swear not 10 seconds had passed before a beetle went streaking by. Closer than any I had ever seen. You could see the trail it left in the sky and it glowed bright red. She got so excited and ran to tell my wife that she saw one. My wife does not believe that to me or my daughter saw a beetle that quickly. I swear on my life it happened. When I was a teenager I almost got run over by Robert Pattinson in my hometown. It's a smaller city between Bruges and Ghent. He was driving a Mercedes. Probably on his way from Brussels to the hotel he was staying in on the coast. I'm 100% sure it was him. He was in Brussels for a premiere for the latest Twilight movie at the time. Only told my dad. Was crossing the border at the Golden Triangle from Thailand into Myanmar. Had a heat stroke due to dehydration and passed out in the middle of the street right after the passport control. Woke up to 5 armed soldiers pointing rifles in my face. Don't speak a word of Thai or any other Asian language. I signaled I need to drink water with my hands and they gave me a Coca-Cola and helped me sit down in a nearby chair. It's too bad you didn't speak the language. Because they were saying, hey, you're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right? Full stop. I like watching wild birds at my work. I watched a young magpie steal bread off a raven. The magpie's family then attacked the young magpie. Took the bread off and gave it back to the raven. They were bird yelling at the young bird. Then called to the young magpie and kinda forced it to the front of the pack to the raven. The adult magpies gently pecked at the young magpie until it sung at the raven. Then the magpies all waddled away and went back to hunting for bugs. I feel like I watched some sort of family magpie discipline to prevent an interspecies bird war. Edit. These are Australian birds so they are the size of footballs. Magpies are smart and a bit CNTY if they don't like you. I was on a train and this train had one of those chains which you pull in case of an emergency and it stops the train, and if you pull it for no reason you can face up to 2 years in prison and a huge fine. So I was just sitting and when I decided to get up to go to the washroom, I was kind of stuck so I used the nearest thing to help me get up and what I pulled was the chain. Suddenly the train stopped and I was like, oh crap, here I go to the prison. When suddenly people started running out of the train. P.S. The train had no doors. You would understand if you know what an average local Indian train looks like. I don't know about other countries. And what I realized was that a compartment of the train was on fire. So that's how I survived from going to prison and accidentally saved the train. I told this story to a friend but he would not believe me so I just let it go. TLDR, I saved train and no go prison. One time after school I was emptying my bag on my bed. I had a sandwich wrapped in cling wrap from lunch that I didn't eat. I dropped the sandwich on the floor and I went to pick it up. I couldn't find it anywhere. I checked under my bed, in my bag, all over the floor and under any items. I never found that sandwich. Edit. Thanks for the silver, kind stranger. Once when I was 8 I was climbing out of the bathtub after showering. Since I was wet and shitty, my mom wrapped me up in a towel so my hands were wrapped as well. I ended up tripping over the edge of the bathtub and face planted onto the ground. where I just laid there kinda comatose for a second. So I tried to get up. Blood flowing down my face from a cut in my head and my nose. And my bucket of crabs nearby, this was a seaside resort, toppled over and went all over me. And they were like in a blood frenzy or something because they pinched me all over, so I started rolling on the ground. Lovely experience BTW, my family kinda just stared at me. I bled from my nose for 3 hours after being rescued from the crabs. And got sent to hospital, where my nose actually wasn't broken. My family refuses to acknowledge it ever happened even though I have a hospital bracelet with that date. Opened the fridge and edit, jar of mustard came falling down. It hit the ground and I already thought, great. Now I have to clean all of it up. But I genuinely didn't hear it hitting the ground. When I looked down there was nothing there. No glass shards. Mustard. Nothing. Looked around for a good 5 minutes questioning my reality. Turns out it kinda repelled off the ground and landed on the winner shelf, next to the fridge. Like 5 feet above the floor. Upright. Standing. It straight up did a bottle flip off the floor. It dropped a solid 6 feet on hard ground and just bounced. Still questioning the laws of physics to this date. My friend and I once missed the last train home after a gig and wandered around a nearby harbor, killing time until the trains started up again. A drunk man, around 30 years older than us at the time, stumbled out of a building and invited us onto his boat. We sat with him drinking rum for a few hours while he regaled us with stories about all the Essex parties he'd hosted on this boat. I didn't believe him, but I was warm and had a drink in hand, so I humored him. He eventually pulled a lever near the front which opened a secret door to a Essex dungeon, filled with all kinds of bondage gear and Essex toys. We then added each other on Facebook and my friend and I went to catch our train back to London. Edit. He would tell us about the numerous women that were half his age that would come from all over the country to attend these parties. He would also tell us that he was absolutely, unequivocally not gay, but would totally suck off the other guys in attendance because it was the polite thing to do. A pirate hero. I saw a girl who contracted a rare African parasite shoot crack, causing tiny worms to crawl out of the hole in her arm and from the corners of her eyes. It happened. I'm sure it did. I saw the worms. She held one up and said, "See? I told you. This is what they look like." I threw it on the floor and burned it with a lighter. I wasn't even on drugs because I had a drug test for probation in the morning. It's like my own brain is trying to convince me it didn't happen, but I'm sure of it. When I was 9 or 10 years old, I was walking around in our flat and wondering what was itching below my foot. So I looked and I had a thumbtack sticking all the way inside my heel. I have no clue why, but it didn't hurt at all. I had a huge shock though. Also interesting to note that the hole is still there 12 years later. You got a thick layer of dead skin there. If you walked around barefoot a lot, it can easily be as thick as a thumbtack. The itching implying it got very close to your next skin layer, or was scratching it. Hole stays because you haven't filed down your dead boy skin over all those years. I fell asleep listening to a CD one day and a little bit later woke up to it still playing and on at a part where they did a skit before a song. The skit was kind of funny, but there was one part I couldn't hear, so I got out of bed to rewind it, and when it played back it was entirely in French. I don't speak French but could understand what they were saying clear as day a minute earlier. I don't know what happened. Omelette du fromage. When I was 6 I was in a car with my aunt. While she was driving I opened door and fell out. Luckily she didn't drive fast. Probably she just started driving. I can't remember. So I wasn't hurt. I told that to my family several times already and they refused to believe. Few weeks ago, I was with my aunt and she told me that story and asked me do I remember that. On my first day of school, in I think social studies, I had a sudden feeling of content knowledge that I knew everyone. That kind of feeling you get when you've been there for a while. Which didn't make any sense, as it was the first day of school and I knew I didn't know any of these other kids. Then the feeling went away as I questioned it. And I shrugged it off. Until during the last week of school. In the same class. Bored and ready to go. I suddenly felt mildly panicked that I didn't know anyone. As if it was the first day again. Then I remembered how I felt on the first day. For 1 week when I got the flu, my farts would whistle no matter what position I was in. My dog kept thinking I was calling him. Got a knife put to my throat as a joke once when I was little and decided to go play outside on my own. Only told my parents years later because I didn't want them to worry. Weird child logic. Looking back at it. Not as crazy as other comments on here. But I once cracked open 2 double-yolked eggs in a row. When I was 8 or 9, my buddies and I were racing our BMX bikes to school. It was a cold night, so as the cars had splashed water all over the sidewalk during the night, it froze into this slick skating rink. I was the lead bike, and as I tried to round the corner I wiped out on the ice and slid right across the highway. Right under AFCK and semi-truck. Popped out the other side unscathed with the front tire of my bike completely smashed. Truck rolled right over the tire and completely missed me. When I was 14 I was making myself a cup of coffee or tea. Can't quite remember. But I had a teaspoon placed in my mug. As I was turning I kind of pushed the top of the spoon with my left hand and it landed on the floor like 2 feet away from me. I picked it up. Turned around and the teaspoon was still in the mug. Now I had 2 teaspoons. To this day I'm not sure if I had 2 teaspoons that sticked with one another in that mug or did I do some weird item doubling magic lol. When I was in high school, a bully punched me in the face. My mom thought he broke my orbital bone. So took me to the ER. ER doc sent me to an eye specialist just to be safe. Eye doc did an exam. Said my eye and socket were fine. But that I really need to get that mass behind your jaw looked at. 7 years prior to this, an orthodontist gave me splints to wear at night. Because the lump the eye doc was referring to was thought to be TMJ at the time. I was referred to a neurologist. And went in for emergency surgery the next day. They excised a 2-inch tall, 1-inch long egg-shaped mass. Benign. Thankfully. It was a f***ing fully formed ear. One day in my freshman year of college I biked to Subway. Like halfway though my rider my chains fell off. I was on campus and it was crowded, so I just walked my bike the rest of the way and figured I'd fix it later. I got my sandwich and came out to go eat it back at my dorm. My chain was completely fixed and was perfect. I was in there for less than 5 minutes. I don't know how it was fixed. My guess is some kind of person noticed the chains were broken and just fixed them on the spot. I was thrilled but not without massive curiosity. This isn't very extreme. I was driving home about 8 years ago at night along my usual route. It's a narrow straight road that has no streetlights but is reasonably busy even at night and is about 2 miles long before I reach my exit. I'm driving. Listening to music and contemplating. Well. Nothing when I notice there's a light in the sky following me. There's a tiny runway near my old house used mainly by crop dusters. So I assume it's a small plane. Then I notice another. Then another and another until there's at least 10 lights all following me as I drive down this road. They're not in any kind of formation and there's not a single sound except the sound of my engine. I pull over and they slow down and hover as I get out of the car. I'm the only one on the road at this point. As I reach back into my car to get my phone to take some video, they suddenly all move at incredible speed to a single straight line and zoom off into the distance at incredible speed. I stood there stunned for at least 5 minutes, knowing that no one would ever believe me. My best friend in grade school told me to think fast and proceeded to throw a basketball at my face. I suck at all sports, so it hit me square in the nose. Blood was everywhere. And my friend nearly passed out. Nose is no longer broken. I go to same friend's birthday party about 2 days later and in all my excitement I thud into their glass door. Back to the hospital. Where the nurses and doctors are convinced my mother is beating me. They had a social worker talk to me separately and I was so animated in my story they had no choice but to believe I was just stupid. I was pulled over in a neighboring small town. During the traffic stop with the kind officer, one of those state trooper cars pulled slowly by. The windows were down and 2 troopers had their heads out of the back window and another was hanging out the front. They yelled at the city cop state troopers Mothefka, flashed their lights and siren, then drove off. The cop just looked at me with this depressed expression. Granny next door was pronounced dead early one winter morning. By noon, relatives and neighbors had gathered to offer condolences. And that's when she just got up. When the tea settled down, we asked her what happened. She said that men in black robes came to fetch her late at night. Said it was her time. They took her to their master who looked at her and shook his head. He said there was a mistake and that they got the wrong person. He nudged her shoulder back and that's when she got up. People were creeped out, but still relieved that the lady was alright. That was until we learned that 2 streets down, a much younger lady by the same name had passed away of natural causes just around that time. I was at a video slot casino, playing video blackjack, and this old man next to me hit the lucky lady's jackpot for $9,000. His face turned even whiter than it already was. And he turned to me and literally begged me to claim it for him. And that nobody is supposed to know he is here. He said he would split it with me. I asked a few questions. Taxes. Yada yada. And I claimed it. Deducted the $3 K tax. And he gave me $1. $700 cash for the favor. I had gotten fired that day. And with that money, purchased a laptop. Did some graphic work. And was able to move back home to be close to my parents. Landing a good job and living happily ever after. I was rowing through the middle of a nearby lake. Coming home from fishing. The lake is flat as glass. Not a single wave but the ones I made. About 11 AM. I stopped for a second. Because one of the oars popped out of its socket. And it was bitch to fix. Suddenly something bumped the boat from below. Hard enough that I fell on my ass and the boat started rotating in place. Until it was ass backwards. After 3 seconds, there was the same dead stillness again. Not a single wave. The only non-creepypasta explanation I can think of is that there were divers in the lake who decided to FCK with me. During a trip to Williamsburg I woke up in the middle of the night to an either Civil or Revolutionary War soldier, too dark and sketchless to tell, sitting on the foot of the bed. He got up and turned around and I swear it was a boy no older than 15-16 and had a ragged bullet hole wound just below his neck. I initially read ragged butthole and thought yeah. I have some vivid memories from when I was a baby. Most people's earliest memories are from when they're toddlers. But I remember bits and pieces of being an infant and getting breastfed by my mom. I also recall listening to her singing songs to me while rocking me and sitting in my crib for hours listening to music playing. I don't remember everything day by day but there are quite a few memories from that time. My earliest memory that I can fully recall is hearing my mom and dad arguing in clear view of my crib. I don't remember what they were saying but I know they were shouting at each other and I was getting upset because of it. Since I was in a crib, I know I couldn't have been a year old yet. When I was 6 my summer camp lost me for over an hour on a trip. They got my face painted so that my mom wouldn't be able to tell I was sobbing. She didn't find out until recently. I fell off a 35-foot bridge onto concrete and barely even hurt myself. The most I got was a badly bruised thigh and a pretty bad graze on my elbow. Whenever I tell this to people they all call me out. Edit. Don't ask how I fell off of the bridge. Shit happens. Man. Forgot to include this originally but not even my parents believe me to this day. When I got home the next morning and told them why my thigh was purple and my elbow was FK'd. They told me I must have been too drunk to remember the actual story and that I most likely just fell in the street.